Hello, everyone. We'll wait for another minute. We'll let people join in. I think then we'll start. All right. So let's get started. So first of all, a very warm welcome to one and all who have joined and the ones who are joining as we speak. Super excited for this webinar on boosting retention in mobile apps with contextual user experiences. This webinar is conducted by NoCode Cloud, which is a global MarTech company. It's into customer engagement, product experience, machine learning, personalization, and it is used by a lot of these growth managers, product managers, marketing managers across the globe. So, one-stop solution for any of your MarTech need. It's NoCode Cloud. Today, we are joined by this interesting panelist. To start with, there is Adhyan, who is Manager and Retention Growth with Licious. Licious is an Indian brand which provides fresh and quality meat online. And this is how Adhyan tells, how he introduces himself. He's a Swiss Army knife. He specializes in multiple things like growth marketing, marketing analytics, retention, product management. So that's Adhyan to you. Next, we have Fumi. And Fumi comes with a very wide experience of 18 years in the industry. She's from Wema Bank, Nigeria, and she heads marketing, communication, and investor relationships there. She also enjoys a lot of teaching and helping others. A lot of help would be required with the kind of experience that Fumi had gained over the course of time. And next we have Tayo. So Tayo again is from Nigeria. He heads digital at InterSwitch. So Tayo says that a wordsmith whose pen can turn an Edward copy into a love letter. That's what Tayo is for us. So we'll see a lot of those interesting stories coming from Tayo with a lot of implementation around digital marketing, around retention he has done. And finally, me, I am from NoCode Solutions, India based, and I look after international markets. I'm AVP product sales there. I have like 9+ years of experience already, and worked with a lot of brands, majorly with a lot of retention marketing strategies that we have deployed. So I think a lot of those experience would come out and we can talk more on that. Talking about our today's discussion, which is on boosting retention in mobile app in the contextual user experience. So today, the whole discussion is going to be in two parts. One is where in the initial 20 minutes, I will take you through a few slides, which talks about how some of those interesting use cases that are being deployed at scale, how this product-led growth has been, interestingly adopted by a lot of these brands and contextual user experiences examples. And in the next 40 minutes, we will have a quick fireside chat, which wherein we will be joined by our fellow panelists, Adhyan, Fumi, and Tayo, and we will have a quick discussion on this strategy of improving retention rates. Before we move on, a quick poll we would like to do, wherein we would like to understand how important is mobile app retention strategy for your company. So we'll take like 10 seconds for you to get back. So maybe we can have a quick polling and people can give their their viewpoint on that. So I see results coming in. I see a lot of cases where they say that acquisition and retention are equally important. Many cases I see retention also gaining some traction. All right. So maybe I'll end the poll now. And let me share the results. Okay, so here we say that a lot of people are right now saying that most important is retention strategy, and many of them have said equally important as acquisition, which is true. But then bringing the focus back on the retention strategy here, let me talk about an interesting stat by AppFlare, which talks about how retention has been one of the challenges. So this is about a global mobile app user retention stats, which says that on day one, what are the retention rates? When I say retention rates, the first time when the user downloads the app and they launches the app, on day one, how many people are doing that second launch? And on day 3, on day 7, day 14, and day 30. By day 30, it's like only 4% if you see. By day 7, it's by and large, lot of users are getting lost out. So it's like only 10% of those users are getting retained. So retention still remains a key challenge altogether. And this has declined from somewhere from 2019 to 20 because of pandemic. We overall see that while there has been the positive side wherein user engagement and loyal customers have increased, but then what has declined is the overall retention rates, and that's majorly because of fierce competition. I mean, people are filled with choices. They can the attention span has reduced, and that's where I think deploying a world-class user experience is what will help them come back to the app and be retained. So let's talk about retention. And before we jump into retention, let's talk about certain precursors that what should be that happy after effect before we deploy this. And now under that, we have something to talk about, which is to do with great user engagement. Now, this is no brainer, right? So a great user engagement would define how long the user is going to stay with us, right? So that's what a great user engagement decides. If a user is coming back to the app, that's the reason why the user would come back to the app is all about the great user engagement, be it WhatsApp or some of those app like Zoom, where because of a great user experience that we saw, we are seeing that a lot of us are now skipping and moving from a Skype to a Zoom and heavy adoption of the of such products who have adopted PLG at scale. Second is better feature discovery. So it's very vital for a long-term success to have a better feature discovery at the right moment when the user is coming. And it's basically the reason why your product remains interesting. There would be a point where a user would say that, hey, I think enough of it. I think I've understood something new I would like to explore. And we as marketers, we need to identify when is the right time to even introduce some of these new features so that we keep our users engaged. And the third interesting point to cover is habit loops. What are those habit loops which are being formed? And important to understand what are those current habits which are being formed by the user when they are engaging with you. For example, let's say a lot of us are using these e-wallets. I use Google Pay a lot. So when I come on Google Pay, I open the app and I want to do a payments. So I go to new payments, type in the number to whom I want to send money, and I send the money, and then I get rewarded with a lot of cash back. Now we have got into the habit of doing this. Paytm, if I talk about, and a lot of these apps, if I talk about, they have created that habit. The reason why it is being replaced by cash as a method at a lot of places. So there are three pieces to it in habit loops again. One is cue or trigger. So we need to see what really starts as a starting point to create that as a habit. Second would be the routine, which is the habit itself. Understanding and finding out what are those habits which are done. And it could be not just one habit, the Google Pay example which I gave, but then it could be more such habits. It could be maybe under the reward section under Google Pay, I'm trying to see if there are more cashback offers which I can get. And third is the reward itself. I get a cashback, reason why I continue doing transactions via Google Pay. Otherwise, there is competition to it, right? There is Paytm, there is PhonePe, there are a lot of other brands who could to whom we could ideally switch. Then all of this would lead to a better retention. At least these three factors are one of the key factors which what leads to a better retention. Thus, you would be there definitely will be a possibility to higher monetization. Related to this, there is another interesting concept. Now, this is around PLG as a concept, product-led growth, and this is by the author named Wes Bush, who has laid down this theory called as bowling alley framework. Now, in a bowling alley, when we go and we are playing this game, the idea is to give a strike where we need to do a strike, and for that there are things that we need to do. First, we need to throw the ball straight so that it hits in the center, and that's where if we guide the user right with a straight line onboarding. When I say straight line onboarding, remove all the bumpers, remove everything which would might give some time for the user to actually grab the value. So absolute minimum number of required steps for a user to experience the value. So with what lot of our marketing activities that we do, there is lot of our perceived value which gets created. Okay. But the experienced value, between that, there is certain time gap. If we can reduce the time to value gap, is where you will see that a better onboarding is happening. Second to it is, there is a product bumper. So again, coming to the bowling alley, even if you go to the kids section, generally we don't have gutters, right, where the ball can go if it is not thrown in the straight line. So if we remove the gutter and there are bumpers, so that which basically, and the ball will basically come back to the center again after colliding with the bumper. So that's exactly, we need to add these product bumpers, which means adding certain helpful tool tips, which will again make the user come back to that straight line and finally get a strike. So these could be in the form of tool tips. Like first time when you come to the app, there are tool tips which gives you a complete onboarding experience to the final transaction and guides you that what exactly that needs to be done. Very recently, I happened to download Cred as an app, and first time when I did my credit card transaction, it was pretty smooth through the complete onboarding cycle that they gave it. It was pretty smooth. That's basically through these product bumpers. And next we have is conversational bumpers, which means there would still be users who would be dropping from the funnel. And that's where we need to prompt the users by emails, SMSs, or any offline method to make them come back to the app. And when they're even dropping off, can we also maybe deploy an NPS survey to understand what has been their key reasons of they moving out of the funnel, and what could be the reasons which we can make them come back to the again our funnel and give them more higher feature discovery. So all of this has to be decided based on different user personas, and how much relevancy we can give based on what paths they have taken, what who the person is, and the complete flow can be defined basis that. Now let's see how different brands are doing this. Okay, few examples. To start with, this is an interesting example by Media OTT, and this is where I see that the whole user experience has been improved by adopting what at scale is being done by Netflix, Amazon, and lot others. That's where they try to understand what are the preferences of the user at the very first go. And this Media OTT brand, they saw that many personas where they saw that users who discovered genres like romance or regional content like Punjabi had a much higher day 7 retention rate, or maybe users who come with a lot of these options, who want to only want to watch or see or hear 90s hit songs, they would come to that. So those are immediate persona capturing, and this is what even this Media OTT app have started doing, where they have this languages and genre preferences on the top basis, which immediately the listing sort of gets recustomized. So the high level hypothesis is that it's very important for us to capture the user persona in the whole onboarding scenario and couple it very smartly with the onboarding experience to overall improve the day 0 retention. And nudging the user has certainly helped the Media OTT brand to improve the overall day 0 retention rates. Next example we have is of one of the largest telecom player from India called Airtel, and also prominent in Nigeria. What they have interestingly done is they have deployed certain some of these product bumpers or tool tips from time and again based on what level the user is engaging with the brand. And simply put, these nudges or these contextual nudges and walkthroughs have helped guide the user to the better retention as compared to what it was earlier. So let me play this one first, and this is talking about how. So Airtel also has got Airtel Banks, and it is talking about click here to link and earn 7.25% interest on your bank account, along with free accident insurance for 1 lakh. Now this is only to the set of users who would have come on the app, are gold members, and already using Airtel app to do their monthly prepaid recharges. Okay, but now they are doing a subtle cross sell to some of these gold members, and it's not just a walkthrough. It's not just a single nudge, but it's a complete walkthrough where the user is also guided to the form page, and it tells them that where to click and how to proceed ahead to attain that scheme they are promoting. Second we have is they also do interesting cross sell. So it's a super app, right? So it has got other features as well, which is to do with a lot of content which they have tied up with a lot of these OTT brands. It could also be watched on the app, and that's where indicatively it also tells the user in the journey that you could also watch a lot of content via, and you could pay subscriptions via Airtel Money. Third one is my favorite. This is about how recharges can be improved, and a lot of these fintech companies, I think they would be able to also relate to this, wherein when the user is coming on the app, and generally when they come on to a lot of these e-wallet apps, the general trend is we'll do a payment, and I think if we are getting good rewards and cashback, we will get that and we will move out. The idea here is how we can also maybe do a cross sell so that the retention is long term. That's where this, they wanted more and more. Airtel wanted to do more and more people to do their prepaid recharges from their phone, and they were getting a lot of competition from a lot of fintech apps. So they had launched a lot of these functionalities, like Airtel Banks is there, and you saw the media part already. And let me play the video for this. So this was a series of nudges done to prepaid users whose incoming was due in the next 6 days. And to them, when they come on the app, they first time see with this backdrop, they see a tooltip which says that the prepaid is due in the next 6 days, so kindly recharge. So when a person clicks on it, again, it's a complete guided walkthrough that how they can do the transaction. And the first time this helps them. So again, in the second page, if you look at, user is filled with a lot of other options, and that would be the funnel drop. So basically, that's the product that's the bumper that we have here, and that's where we need to guide the user with again a tooltip to tell them what is that most preferred step that they should click, and this creates a habit. So they click on all pack generally when they come here, they click on the top, which is generally a recommended pack for the user, and they come to the final transaction page. So this whole journey can be easily attained, and this somewhere reduce the overall prepaid recharges, improve the prepaid recharges by 40%. Likewise, another example by QuickRide, which is on, when a user comes, the QuickRide is one of the leading ride-hailing app from India again. And what we saw with them is that when the user comes on the app, and if they search for a cab or a ride, and if they don't find it, they would generally switch to a different options which are available. So the attention span and the patience by the customer is generally very less. So they had this function called as auto confirm, which basically can still search for the cab while you don't find it. And that's where, again, it comes when the user is not able to find a ride for that specific direction. And this first, tooltip would come. And this again is a guided tool to the user that how they can enable it. And if you look at the second screen and the third screen is basically the screens which comes after, post the person clicks on that auto confirm, those 3 lines on the top. So I hope these 2 examples were interesting to you guys. Now, what I would like to understand with a lot of these examples which are being shown to you, what are the key challenges that you would like to address for your brand? And again, I have launched a poll, and this talks about user retention, funnel drop-offs, activation, feature adoption. So out of these, 4 options you have, what according to you is the most important challenge that you would like to address? Is it a retention, activation, adoption? And I'm sure there would be, various, challenges that you would be facing. All right. So, it's a mixed bag again. We see that, retention is on the top, and then after that, there is a funnel drop off. I'll end the poll now. And let me also share the result. So user retention seems to be at the top. But if you look at all of these are somewhere interrelated, retention leads to a funnel drop off, activation, feature adoption. So this is very smartly interlinked with each other. And it's a puzzle question for you all in a way. So definitely all of this has to be sort of looked at closely, and a larger goal is of course retention to it. What we intend to do and what NetCode does in the whole product experience piece and the whole user experience piece, how that can be enhanced. We have a complete NoCode framework, which provides agility to the product and the growth team to do this and adopt some of these contextual nudges example, which I showed you at scale. And the options that you get from here is basically a contextual walkthrough that can be deployed from this NoCode framework. Which can be useful for some of the polling that I did on onboarding, activation, feature discovery, personalizing the code experience of the user when they come and completely, and it could be a complete dynamic onboarding experience based on user coming first time, second time, third time, and so on. Second to it, I think A/B test functionalities are also available at scale. I think any marketer, one of the key KPIs would be keep doing experimentation at scale, and that's where this can be one added feature. Next is feedback and surveys. Again, those NPS, those qualitative inputs are very important to understand why. A lot of this might not even come out from the analysis that we see, but then a very straightforward feedback from the user will help us understand and determine what should be that next thing that we should be taking up in our functions. And feature releases. So it's very important when we also do a feature release. We know that that feature is important, but how do we put it across to the customer? I mean, there would be a lot of ways, right? So the content strategy, the color strategy, the placement, lot of things are considered, and we have to do multiple app releases at times for that. So there could be a complete feature release management module, which could help you understand and decouple deployments and release. It's a quick video that I'll play, which we spoke of nudges, so how easy it is. So I said that it's a complete no-code framework. So through this no-code framework, how easy it is to deploy these contextual nudges and walkthroughs. So this is a sample example where we are trying to set up a nudge, and if you look at it, starts by defining a nudge, and you could define a rollout strategy, whether it's a multi-experiment or it's a nudge rollout to a certain controlled group that we define. And then there are a series of options you have on the type of nudges that you could deploy. And let's say we have picked up this option, and the second option is, of course, when we say no code and it has to be linked with the app, that's where we have a complete mirroring of the app that happens on the interface. So right now, let's say if this is the screen where we wish to deploy our nudge, it gets completely mirrored on the screen. And once we capture it, the complete view hierarchy of that screen gets captured. And that's where we could define where we wish to exactly deploy our nudge. And we can completely customize this based on our brand guidelines, and define further things under which, and small customizations that we can do. We could also even personalize the overall content piece. So for example, if this nudge has to say, hi Mayank, or hi Adhyan, that's exactly what the nudge could also do. So that's where the whole personalization piece and the dynamic piece also gets quite a good emphasis. In fact, the font that we select is also the app default font, which makes it very convenient for us to say that we definitely want to go ahead with what your brand guidelines are. So that's on the whole setup piece. And finally, once we do that, then the trigger options are there, where and those are very detailed again in regards to could be a nudge action or an app action, and immediately this is the time frame that we generally take to deploy. And you could test it on any of your device, or push it to a production to certain set of users to see how the impact of this has been, and this would come out on that specific action that you take. So yeah, that's all, guys. I think we would like to have one other poll, and before we move forward, which is on if this sounds interesting to you, how and would you like to see the Netcode's no-code platform in action, and we can catch up later on to discuss on how this could be deployed and how easy it is to be deployed in your frame of work. And these are some of the brands who are working with us already, and like Dream11, Quick Ride, Redbus, and they are doing this at scale. I mean, Airtel example I've already showed you. They have deployed this at scale, and they are interestingly seeing that how we could improve the overall app experience. So ending the poll now. And now we move on to the next interesting part, which is about we all discussing with our panelists. So Adhyan, Fumi, Tayo, all of you, if you are here, maybe you could switch on your camera and say hi to our lovely audience.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Tayo. Hi, Adhyan. Hi, Fumi.
Hi. How are you?
Yeah, while I have an introduction to...
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Tayo. So while I've done a introduction of all of you in the initial start, but if you maybe like to spend like a minute on introducing yourself and what you get out of it and what all things you would like to maybe touch upon today. We'll start with you, maybe Adhyan, we'll start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Mayank. That was indeed a very comprehensive conversation around contextual user experiences.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, by virtue of introduction, I work in Licious. So for those of you who don't know about Licious, it's an online meat and seafood ordering app. It's been in operation for 6 years now. I take care of multiple things at Licious. I work as a retention manager. I work as a growth manager. I also double hat with product management sometimes, right? So it's kind of a Swiss Army knife role that I earlier pointed out, right? So that's more or less about me. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Adyan. Tayo, would you like to go next?
Okay, so my name is Oluwatayo Alofun. I lead the digital team at InterSwitch. And thanks a lot for that wonderful presentation. You know, I kind of feel that we don't have any need for this fireside anymore. It looks like you've covered everything. But for those that don't know InterSwitch, InterSwitch is a payment company. It's a fintech out of Africa. We have quite a number of B2B products and B2C products. But the center of everything we do is how we can ensure that payment is easier and seamless for everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're a business or you're an individual. So that's essentially what we do. And you'll probably hear me mention Netco a lot because I've been using Netco for a while now, and it's been quite a great experience. So just to sound the caveat, in case you hear me mention Netco a lot.
Thank you so much, Tayo. Fumi, over to you. Maybe a quick round of introduction from your side.
Hi, my name is Funlayo. I work with Wema Bank, a commercial bank in Nigeria. And we developed the Alert, which is the first digital bank in Africa. Thank you for your presentation. A lot of us focus on acquisition and leave out retention. And I think that starting the conversation around retention and what we need to do is one that's good right now. I'd be looking to discuss and engage with Tayo and Adyan and even you, Maniac, to see how much more we can build our ecosystem from acquisition to retention to loyalty, you know, and to get more from our customers as well as to be able to deliver more to our customers. So thank you for having us. Thank you, Netcore Cloud, for having us today. I'm expecting to have a lot of fun.
I hope it would be fun. Let me start fun with a question to all of you. The first one that I have for you all is: do you think that app offsite channels like email, SMS, web have a certain impactful correlation to the user retention on the app? And to start with, maybe Tayo, you could start maybe with your inputs on this.
Yeah. Okay. So in my experience, I think it does a lot. So last year I was checking for email alone, we have about 43% return on marketing investments. And that is essentially used to drive people into the app. And when you even look at the experience itself, you then find out very quickly. So let me give you a typical scenario. If a customer uninstall your app, you can't possibly talk to the customer within the app anymore. I mean, the guy is outside of your ecosystem. The only way you're able to engage the guy is through some of your offsite platforms, through some of your offsite channels, right? So offsite channel come with that advantage where you are able to engage the customer outside of the ecosystem, especially in the event that they are not within the ecosystem. I mean, most of the things that we offer to customer on our application most time, they are not things that people do every day, right? So they are not likely to go into the app every now and then, right? But there are other platforms that they use every now and then. You are able to platform and they drive to the app for action.
Sorry, Tayo, we are losing you for the last 10 seconds. Hello. I think meanwhile Tayo comes back. Maybe Adhyan will move on to you for the same question. You think that
I think he's back.
Yeah. Okay. Tayo, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, your voice was cracking.
Oh.
No problem. Meanwhile, we'll move on to you, Adhyan, if you can maybe also share in your inputs on the same question if he asks.
Right. Cool. I think there are two words to focus on in that question, man. One is correlation and one is impactful. I think great choice of words there. Correlation, I think, would be typically interchangeably used sometimes, yeah, by my marketers with respect to causation sometimes, right? And I would just like to point that out that it is largely a function of the life cycle in your company or your organization as an offering to your customer, and then obviously the customer's life cycle with you as well, right? So let's say a typical mature company would see different kind of impacts, right, versus a newly starting out firm which is focused on growth, right? So I think with respect to correlation, yes, largely speaking, there is a definite correlation. Whether it's impactful or not, completely dependent on how you measure it, right, and how you attribute it. I think there's a lot of reverse causality built into it because a lot of medium to high intent customers will actually be able to give you those permissions to reach out to them on these external platforms. And as I think Tayo was pointing out, right, there's only a lot of conversation that you can have on the platform. I think a lot of the segmentation happens in the offline world. It's not very real time, at least till now. And to give you that extra opportunity to engage and then maybe able to convert the user better using different touch points, right? So there's a typical touch point model where you at least require 5 to 6 different touch points with the customer to actually be able to convert them better, right? So that's something that speaks to the correlation part of it, right? I think causation is something which is completely different. If let's say emails or SMSs do drive retention, I believe yes. But for that, I think a lot of companies don't actually put the right attribution models and attribution windows in place to be able to measure and improve on that impact. So I think what we do at Licious, and I am mandated by my company to not share any numbers, but what I can do is share the mechanism, right? We always have an always on test and control, right? Which means that even if you launch certain triggers, certain prompts, right, to influence behavior, there's always going to be a decay rate as you go forward, right? So it makes sense to be able to measure incrementality at different points of launching all of these marketing campaigns across these channels, right? And to be able to work on improving that incrementality is something. I think what we completely fall for is sometimes is more is equal to better equation, right? We try and see if we can send that one more SMS or one more email and get that growth coming in, right? But I think incrementality after a certain point, like is the case with most business use cases, right? It attains a diseconomies of scale kind of status, right? And which is why I think the correlation versus causation equation gets affected. And this is where the life cycle management is really important.
So Adhyan, interestingly, in fact, with a lot of conversations that I've had with brands, I've seen that during these festival times, we sent a lot of bulk of communication, which leads to it actually, the relation is that the retention goes down big time because we see a lot of people actually uninstalling the app and, high churn rates are observed. So that's definitely aligned to, what Tayo and you have mentioned. So I think totally agree on that part. Fumi, what's your view on the same question if we ask?
Thanks, Mayak. I think where you are, you need to check where on the funnel that you are and what service you're also offering. But is there a correlation? Absolutely. What I would say is that you also have to ask yourself, what are the offline tools for? If you're building top of mind awareness, yes, spot on, you would use them. But at every point in time, you also have to look at the characteristics of your app. What is your app meant to do? How should the consumer use it? And then that determines how much you rely on offline versus the app information in itself. And as Tayo said, you can't put everything, on the app. So you also need to find out how you can also engage with the customer outside of it. So you want to show them new things. Yes, why not put it offline? And who knows, from offline, other people may know what you do and then go ahead to look out for your app. So is there a correlation? Yes, there is, but it's about knowing how to use it, when to use it, and what you're using it for. Thanks.
That's exactly the conversational bumper. You relate to that point. Okay, so for me, I think I have a question for you. So most of the apps are, they have a vision to become a super app. So they start off with something, let's say, for example, they are e-wallet, and they start giving a lot of those functions. And in fact, at Vima Bank as well, you must have started off with just providing net banking as one of the services, but there would be e-wallet and a lot of other functions. So how do you manage to get your core habit loops right? Or is sticking to the basics like simple onboarding journey good enough?
Thanks. Interestingly, the way I say it is if you're building a super app, you're building a super app for the consumer.
Yeah.
And in building that app for the consumer, you have to know who your consumer is. You have to know what his needs are. And once you do that, you then begin to fit in the customer journey.
Right.
In what exactly it is you're trying to do for the customer. So I'm building my super app. It's not just about me, it's about him. It's about what he wants to do. It's about ensuring that it fits his lifestyle. And because we're humans and we're creatures of habit, what you find is if it fits into my lifestyle, then I will continuously, come back to it. And I think an easy way to do that is using the design thinking methodology. You keep iterating, you keep asking the questions, and you keep getting it better, knowing your customer. Yes, we do have industry standards, and we also have guidelines. So sometimes when building the super app, you also have to be mindful of that. What is industry guidelines? What is industry best practice? But then what does the customer want? And how do you integrate yourself into his life such that he doesn't have to think twice about coming to you? It's just the natural thing to do. And since we're creatures of habit, he will always just come back to you.
Exactly. Interesting viewpoint. I think, Tayo, I would like to ask the same question to you. InterSwitch as a brand itself is quite dynamic and getting into a lot of space. So what's your viewpoint on the same question, if I may ask? Hello, Tayo. Tayo, you're on mute if you're trying to speak. Yeah.
Okay. I believe you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you now, Tayo. Good.
All right. Okay. So, interestingly, when you talk of super app, it's kind of one of our approach to things. Especially with some of our app, with one of our B2C app, Kutela app. Again, I'll just pick it up from where Fumi stopped, which is first you need to carry out a comprehensive research about this user. I always say to people that there is no need trying to build your journey to be as far away as possible from what the user is used to, right? You will confuse the user. But if by virtue of your research, you are able to find out that the user would actually love to have a one view kind of experience, right? The goal for you as an organization is that you then want to be able to position yourself in a lifestyle manner such that you are somewhere at the heart of the consumer's everyday lifestyle. So for instance, he wants to do A, B, C, D, E, right? And then somewhere along the value chain, you are positioned there. So what that also does is that it reduces it helps the consumer to reduce the number of apps he is having to download. So one of the things we've seen over time, and this is not just a Nigerian data, this is more of a global thing, is that people are coming to the realization that they are downloading a lot of apps. So they have 5 different apps for 5 different things, right? And people are coming to that consciousness that how about you give me one app and do 5 different things. And we saw that with the rise of super app like Gojek, giving inspiration to apps in Nigeria like Opay and all of that. And we saw how people embrace them, which is people want to actually be able to do many things in one place, right? But if by the reason of your research, you find out that people are saying that, look, I know you to be an expert in this space, and I just want to keep our relationship that way. There is no point trying to force an extra relationship on the customer, right? But if the output of your research suggests that the customer wouldn't mind more from you, then super app might be the way to go. When it comes to attribution along that channel, so that's where, you know, a great martech like NetCore come into. Sorry, you know, I made a caveat that I was going to mention NetCore a lot in my conversation. So if you have a proper martech, right, that is able to help you track things along different. So for instance, today, we are able to integrate like 2-3 other things to our app, which ordinarily, when you look at it from a broad perspective, they would seem to you like 2-3 other business lines, right? But we're still able to track all of the activities that are going on across all of those new features, if you like to put it that way, because we have a martech. There's only so much you can do right on the platform, especially when you have to bring in 2, 3, 4, 5 different things, right? But with a great martech, you are then able to track properly. You are able to create quote analysis that give you insight into how the customer is interacting with the platform, which of the platform in your super app the customer is actually interacting with better. It kind of gives you insight into whether or not you should even continue with what you are doing, or you should even shut down some aspect of the operation, you know, so that you are not incurring unnecessary costs in trying to retain the customer who acquired the customer. So it all boils down to research, understanding the consumer, having the proper martech that helps you with attribution.
I think your journey defines it. So definitely with a lot of research and development that you have done at your end, would generally define what is that time frame when you have to like really now finally have that feature in place, right? Because users would be of the habit of doing something, but at the end of the day, there are multiple options available out in the market. And you rightly mentioned, Tayo, that there are, you know, 5 apps instead of 5 apps, having that one app who's doing that super job for you would interestingly define how much retention is, you know, maintained. So definitely going ahead with that. I just wanted to say to this, to my audience that we will pick up some questions from the audience as well. So feel free to give questions and we can take up. I think Fumi, you have a question here. So would you like to take that up?
Hey, yes. He's asking how consumer research has helped in positioning Alert right in the heart of consumer lifestyles and in driving further innovation. Right. So like I said, Alert is a digital bank. And when we started out, one of the things that we wanted to do was to change the face of banking. A few things were industry practices. And we thought, what is the pain point of the customer? What does he really want from the bank? And how does he want to onboard? How do we simplify the onboarding process? And so we had to go out to the market and do a number of research. We had to ask questions at every point, asking, so how's this process? What would you like to change in this process? And going to a number of places and I'm speaking to a variety of people. So that is something that you have to do. You have to do consumer research. Again, consumer research, because it's a consuming item. It's something that they go to at every point in time. And to be a super app, you can't just do something passively. You have to almost be a living bin, you know, and being a living bin is you questioning all of the issues all the time, you know? And so for us, it was to ask the questions, and those questions around how do we ensure that our audience, use our product? What do they want? And in finding out what they wanted, we were able to simplify the onboarding process. We were able to even go to the regulatory authorities and change some things that were seen as industry practice. So from asking the questions, from doing the consumer research, you are able to change policy. And then you change policy, you change process, you simplify it, and then they come back to you. So that's from an onboarding process point of view. Then from a positioning point of view, you also have to look at the audience that you're speaking to. The audience that you're speaking to and their needs also matter. And as Tayo said, there's room for iteration when you have a tool like NetCode, which enables you to get feedback from your customer as well and helps you measure. So you are measuring interaction, you are measuring usage, you are measuring awareness, you are measuring so many things. So there's also the fact that as you go on the journey, not only are you doing consumer research to start out, but every single step you are also measuring and you are checking so that you can iterate and change if need be, so that the customer can then understand that you are there for them. And with that, the positioning or the direction that you are going to then becomes something that you can stay true to. With Alert, we wanted to speak to the younger audience. We wanted to speak to people who did not have the patience to go into the banking hall, and we were able to do that. And since we started 4 years ago, we've seen in the market, almost everybody else too has started their own. So well done to Alert. And then I'd say that there's room for us to innovate more, and there's room for us to still continue to do the research to see how we can better people's experience, and also partner with the likes of NetCode and even InterSwitch as well, who provide some back-end support for us as well. Thank you.
Super for me. I think kudos to Alat and team who has done this great job. Adhyan, I know that you guys are not maybe right now maybe looking forward to become a super app, right? But then I see some of the habits which
we just
are,
might.
Okay, that's news for us. Breaking news.
Yeah.
So Adhyan, a question that I would have for you is basically when we explore your app, right? The first time when we come on the home screen, we do see some of those nudges coming out saying that, hey, this is where you could define your address. This is where you could define your, there are like 2-3 nudges, which is on the onboarding side of it. And then later on, I just wanted to know, one is on the 2 questions basically. One is, does that experience would be the same for the user who would have maybe churned out and would have come again? One. And second is later, post that onboarding nudges and contextual nudges that you would have deployed, post that, do we have more nudges that you would have on the retention side of it? Adhyan?
Right. That's a great question. I think for the first part, yes, it is configured differently. I think the whole point of contextualization and personalization is basically to be able to do it in the right moment and to the right users, right? So again, obviously, to a new user, it would be a different setup. To a returning user, it would be a different setup. Obviously, we've not evolved to the point where we would be able to understand from your churn point what message or what offer do we give you, if at all we surface it at any point in the app, right? But I think again, it depends on a lot of external and internal implicit or explicit signals, right? So for example, your browsing data in the past, or your transaction data in the past, or a marriage of the two, right? For sorting the products on the listing page as well, right? All of these things do take into account those real-time and offline data points as well, right? And for the second question, I think with respect to defining it contextual in a contextual manner, right? What helps us do is I think be able to store a lot of this user volume and store it profitably. So a lot of this data, when it surfaces, you are actually in a data overload, right? So it's called data puking. So you are not really in the right frame of mind to know what kind of data to use and what kind of data to target with, right? So I think we keep it very simple. A lot of it has to do with the quality and the cost of data that comes along with users personas, and not to over romanticize around data, right? So ours is a very simple Pareto principle based strategy, to be honest. The top 20% of our events would be driving the 80% of our segmentation or targeting. And if you could just repeat the second part, I could add on to it.
Yeah, the second part was basically on the retention part. So one is, of course, contextual nudges are there on the onboarding side of it, but on the retention side, maybe post one transaction when the person is done, how interestingly you sort of guide them to the second transaction.
Right. So I think this is where I love an article which came online in 2016 or 17. I don't remember. So it was Big Basket. and they were just scaling up. They were present in 25 cities. So for the listeners who don't know Big Basket is arguably one of the biggest e-commerce, e-grocery platforms in India, right? So they were in 25 cities and they were talking about building a cocaine model. Now, this sounds very interesting where they said, when do you actually realize a customer is a sticky customer, right? So they qualified users as trial 1 user, trial 2 user, trial 3 user. And the fourth order is where they qualify the user as a silver user, right? So at that point, all your efforts in terms of retention, in terms of, preventing churn, in terms of resurrecting have to be focused towards that one point where you're able to qualify that user as your sticky customer. Now you talk about users aha moments as well, right? It's a business aha moment, so to say, where the user has crossed that chasm where the base retention would be much lower than those users' retention, right? And this is seen in everyday apps, right? You could see Google Pay, you could see Uber, you could see also Swiggy, Instamart for that matter. I think I love the point on super apps, right? Now what you see with Swiggy Genie or Swiggy Instamart is exactly the same. It's a mini app within the app, right? What they're trying to do is get you to have that first adoption or for that first trial, right? By giving you some incentive, some reward, some prompt, and then they progressively keep on decreasing it. So if you see it, the first offer has to be 100 rupees off, the second offer is 50 rupees off, and then progressively decrease discounts. So I think with respect to our app also, I think it's not very different. We have a rewards program, and this kind of nudges the user with the right messaging and the incentive. So I think the way you talked about the queue, routine and reward equation, right? I think that's what it actually derives from. It's basically Fogg's behavior model's derivative, where you are actually trying to influence behavior by motivation, ability, and prompt, and the combination around these, right? So I think, within the whole life cycle of the customer while browsing, you'll see different points within the app where the customer has come on the screen for the first time. It will be a completely new experience. So it could be a referral landing page where you would give the user a guided walkthrough, or let's say a membership page where they can find their benefits or their savings, right? So all of it is contextualized on the visit or the instance of visit of the user. And I think that makes for a much more engaging and much less impeding user experience, so to say.
Thank you so much, Adyan. That was insightful. I think I have one question for all three of you, and I think you guys can maybe give me a quick checklist. So what is your checklist for drafting a user experience inside the app? So maybe Tayo, we can start off with you. What is your checklist for drafting a good user experience inside the app?
Okay, so interestingly for us, onboarding to our app is about 3 stages. And one of the first things that we track is to even be sure about this onboarding, how the user moves from the first stage to the second stage to the third stage, right? Where it becomes a bona fide. And we're able to track the drop-off point, and we're able to set up series of automations in terms of communication to be able to address those drop-offs at each of.
Okay. I guess we are losing Tayo right now. Fumi, would you like to take that up, this question?
All right, thank you. I think the first one for us is simplicity. How simple is the user interface? How easy is it to navigate? How simple and easy is it for the customer to understand as well? So how simple is the journey? And then the second one would be, what is the connectivity within the app in itself? So how do you navigate? What is the flow? And then the third one for us would be, how relevant is it to the audience that's using it?
Interesting for me. I think that's like straight line onboarding for me. Adyan, what about you? Well, you somewhere covered this in a lot of your conversation, but still, if you have to put a checklist to it, what would that be?
Right. So I break it down into 2 actually. So it's basically pre-drafting and post-drafting. I think a lot of focus goes into during and post. Not a lot of focus is given to pre. So I think you first of all start with the user at the center, right? And I think both Tayo and Fumi have spoken at length about how it's important to create those user personas and then be able to personalize experiences. Yeah. But I think what you need to actually look at is what is your hypothesis that you're solving for? What is the null hypothesis? What is the alternate hypothesis, right? And what is the impact sizing? And then a lot of marketers, I think they tend to fall in the trap that they don't know what success looks like, right? They just design for it and then they wait for things to happen. So that usually, backfires sometimes. So I think it's important how you want to set it up, why you want to set it up, and how will you be able to measure it, right? I think in terms of just the during wala checklist, right? So I think what happens is you would actually take the path of least friction or effort, right? The user effort score has to be minimized. I think Fumi said it correctly. You have to make it very simple, so simple that a stupid person can understand it, right? It has to be configurable, has to be very flexible. And I think a lot of these changes have to be very flexible. You don't want to be in a case where the changes are not reversible, right? You walk down a path and you realize that this is not where I wanted to land, right? So you would be able to come back with least amount of effort and time and cost, right? And then there are obviously the user experience considerations as well, where you look at the size, the intensity, whether it's being repeated. Are you drawing more contrast? Are you drawing more motion, right? Which actually takes away from the actual CTA. So I would give you one example, right? We wanted to create experiences around new user offer adoption, right? And we understood that if we give them a 20% off, right, it could mean good things for our overall conversion rate down the funnel. What we did not realize that putting this nudge in a forward moving flow might not be the most seamless thing to do. And what happened was it was covering most of the critical information areas within the app. And you could understand that even though there was a marginal uplift within test and control, right, the overall time to convert was getting much higher. So which is where I think you're able to increase certain business metrics, but it's not a first order thinking alone. I think a lot of us miss the second order thinking. And this is where I have an example. So basically, there was this wild species of cane toads. So these are poisonous frogs that used to exist in Hawaii. Now, if you see the world map, right, Hawaii is just close to Australia by air travel at least. So what they did was in 1930s, they brought these cane toads from Hawaii to Australia. And they wanted to kill beetles basically in the sugarcane farms, thinking that it will eradicate all the pests and it will act as a natural pesticide, right? What they did not think of was it does not have a natural predator in the nature, right, in the Australian ecosystem. So there would be no species that would be able to kill this cane toad, right? Which meant that it would wreak havoc on all the other life forms as well. So I think that's a second order thing, which is where I think a lot of this comes down to what are you trying to solve for and what are the check metrics that you would actually solve for in the longer run. Because a short time uplift would actually run for only a few days or a few weeks, right? But it's eventually the customer experience that has to be looked at, right? So I think, yeah, that would be my take.
That's a very interesting out of the game wild example, Atyan, but I think we would be able to relate to that. Fumi, we'll take one question from the audience, and if you would like to take that up, which is about is website going out of trend and mobile app is in trend? What are brands doing differently for user experience for mobile app?
Thank you. Is website going out of trend? I don't think so. I think what we have not been able to do very well is a proper integration from web to mobile app. And we probably need to work on that. So the question is website going out of trend? I'd say no. However, mobile app, yes, is very much in trend. And the reason is because you can carry it with you. It's right there beside you. It's easy access for you. So yes, it's very much in trend. It's almost become like makeup for a lot of us. So what are brands doing differently for user experience for mobile apps? The truth is, I can speak for my brand. I'm not sure I can speak for a lot of other brands, but one thing that I must say is that simplicity comes out key as one of the things that we are doing, and even the look and feel. So how interesting does it look? How endearing does it look? You really don't want to look at anything that's scary. It has to look friendly, you know? So there's something about the look and feel that's also quite important. And then, like we said, right now, a lot of us are into what is important to us, what matters most to us. And this for us is very key. If you're able to build this consumer desires or consumer requirements into your app, then you find out that you have more people coming into your mobile app. Again, it's also about saying, how do you make life simpler for people? Essentially, it's not about the app in itself. It's about how the customer feels within himself. Most times people do not say, I need a bank. People say, I need where to keep my money. So the question is, what exactly are you answering? What question are you answering? You have to be mindful of that. And I think what helps with when it comes to the user experience. So that asking the question, what really do you want? So do I create an app because everybody is creating an app, or I create an app because I can really attend to your needs? I can really solve your problems, so to speak. And sometimes it's not even in problem solving, but it's in being able to give me the options to say, well, this is the problem one that you have. Do you know you can try 1, you can try 2, you can try 3 to get to the end. So it's being able to ensure that we leave the brand, we live with the customer at this time. Okay, that's the second one. Should I just take that as well, Maya?
For me, we would be out of our time now, so it's already.
All right. Okay then.
So, but I think there's a lot of interesting conversations that are happening. But I really liked the kind of ideas and thought processes that have come out. I've made a note of few of them. I think I'll be using it in my next webinar, and will not give you regards to any of you. Just kidding. But thank you so much, Fumi, Tayo, and Adhyan for coming today and and sharing a lot of those ideas. I think we had this interesting 1 hour with all of you, especially the 40 minutes I would call is the actual icing on the cake that we have here. So before we end, I think a last poll that I would like to publish is on for our audience again, that how they would like to rate our webinar, and we can get those feedback coming from them, and let's see how is that. And like I said again, Tayo, Fumi, Adhyan, thank you so much for being such a great panelist. I really love the conversations we had. I think we'll keep in touch, and audience, thank you so much for being a lovely audience. I think we were very engaging. We had a lot of those conversations happening. So thank you so much for that. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, thank you for having us. And thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.